She knocked 5 times. Not once, not twice. 5. Like she was spelling something in Morse code. I didn't open the door right away. I just sat there in the dark, holding a spoonful of cold cereal I'd stopped caring to finish, staring at the dent in the wall from where I once threw my phone. The dent was still there. The phone wasn't. The knocking came again. 5 taps. Same rhythm. Same hesitation between the third and fourth. Like a heart that stuttered before giving up. I didn't want to move. Not because I was afraid, though maybe I was, but because I knew the universe had a sick sense of humor. And that kind of knock, it doesn't show up without a reason. When I finally opened the door, it wasn't the universe waiting outside. It was Lorna, and she was pregnant. Her coat was soaked through from the rain, her breath visible in the night air, and her eyes looked like they hadn't slept since I left. She cradled her stomach as if it were fragile glass. I didn't say a word. I didn't even step aside. Just stood there like a statue, as if stillness could shield me from whatever disaster she brought with her. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. "Please," she said. Just one word. Like it cost her everything. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because last time I heard her beg, it was through a wall, on the other side of a locked bathroom, while I was packing my things and pretending I didn't hear her sobbing behind the door. That night, I didn't even look back. I disappeared. New city. New job. New name on the mailbox. I buried her like a bad memory that rots too long and starts smelling sweet. But here she was, breathing and broken and visibly carrying a secret. "What do you want?" I finally asked, and my voice cracked like old wood. Her hands shook as she reached into her coat. I thought she was pulling out a letter. But no, it was a baby sock. Tiny. Blue. Still with the tag. "It's yours," she whispered. "But that's not why I'm here." I should have slammed the door. I should have said nothing. I should have called the police, a priest, a therapist, anyone but her. But I let her in, and as the door closed behind her, so did the last quiet hour I would have for a very long time. Because Lorna didn't just bring a child into my world. She brought the truth, and I wasn't ready for it. The door clicked shut behind her like a judge's gavel, sealing something that couldn't be reversed. She stood there dripping on my old welcome mat, looking like a stranger dressed in a memory. Her hair was darker than I remembered, her makeup worn off by the rain or maybe by months of crying. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were locked on her stomach. Round, full, undeniably real. And the worst part? Some piece of me, a piece I hated, wanted to believe her. "I'm not here to fight," she said quietly, her voice like wind brushing through broken glass. I didn't know where else to go. I walked past her into the kitchen without offering her to follow, but of course, she did. Her footsteps were light. Lorna always walked like she didn't want to wake a sleeping world. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, the one that still had her lipstick stain from back when mornings were normal. I should have thrown it out. I told myself I had. But it was still there, haunting the back of the cabinet. "I don't want anything from you," she continued, standing awkwardly behind the counter, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the baby's sock like a lifeline. "I just need to tell you something. And then I'll go." I sipped the coffee. It was bitter, stale. It matched the air between us. "You could have texted," I muttered. She flinched. "You blocked me." Good. I wanted her to feel that. I wanted her to feel a fraction of what I felt the day I found her voice in another man's mouth. But of course I said nothing. I just stared at her belly, that silent accusation growing between us. It could have been anyone's. I told myself that over and over in my head. Anyone's but mine. "Why now?" I finally asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled a folded paper from her coat and laid it gently on the counter like a confession. I didn't touch it. "It's a paternity test," she said. "I did it last week. It's yours, Gareth." My heart stopped, then restarted like an old engine that hadn't been turned over in years. "No," I said. "You're lying." "I wish I was." I picked up the paper with shaking hands. It had the cold, clinical precision of science. Names, percentages, confirmations. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat down. Lorna sat too, across from me, the same spot where we used to eat Chinese takeout and argue over which bad movie to watch. Now it was a battlefield. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said, voice trembling. "I was going to tell you. I couldn't face you. Not after what I did. So why now?" I asked again, louder this time. "Why this moment? What changed?" She looked up, and for a second, I saw the older, Not the liar. Not the ghost. Just the girl I used to love. And then she shattered it with 6 words. Because he doesn't know I left. I stared at her. What? She swallowed hard. Trey. He doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't even know I'm gone. The room froze. You mean you're still with him? I said, my voice rising. You're still with the guy you cheated with and now you're, what? Just visiting your ex-husband with a baby you claim is his. I'm not with him, she said quickly. I'm running from him. Those words hit different. She looked around like the walls had ears. Her voice dropped. He's not who I thought he was. It got bad, Gareth. Really bad. Controlling. Violent. He said if the baby wasn't his, he'd make sure I never. She stopped herself. Her breathing was ragged. I leaned back, trying to process what I was hearing. So what? I'm the safe option now. I asked. You burn the house down, then come crawling back when the fire spreads? Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't answer. I wanted her gone. I wanted her out of my space, out of my new life. But as I looked at her, soaked and shaking and clearly terrified, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about survival. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for either. I didn't sleep that night. She curled up on my worn-out couch, too exhausted to move, wrapped in the same blanket she'd once called itchy but endearing. I stood in the hallway, staring at her silhouette in the dim light, arms crossed, mind racing. My apartment felt like a stranger's. Her presence infected every corner, made it feel like hers again. And I hated that. But I didn't tell her to leave. That was my first mistake. By morning, I hadn't decided if I was more angry than confused, or more confused than scared. All I knew was that something in her story didn't sit right. She was running, sure. But from what exactly? From him? From herself? Or from something far worse? I made eggs. Habit, I guess. She didn't ask. She didn't thank me. She just sat there, blank-eyed, and quietly ate half a bite before setting her fork down. Her hands trembled. Not like she was cold, like she was carrying something too heavy for her bones. Trey, I said finally. Tell me everything. She hesitated. You came here, you showed me a baby sock and a test result, and now you're sleeping on my couch. I think I deserve more than breadcrumbs. Lorna stared at her hands like they were telling a story she couldn't say aloud. He changed, she said, her voice hollow. After you left. It started slowly. He'd get weird about my phone, about what I wore, about who I talked to. At first, I thought it was insecurity, maybe guilt, even. But then it got deliberate. I raised an eyebrow. You're saying he was abusive? She nodded, once, but not like she wanted to. More like she had no other option. There were nights I thought about leaving, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't think you'd even speak to me. Then I found out I was pregnant. At first, I assumed it was his. The timing, it was confusing. But something didn't add up. So I got tested. And then what? I asked. You just packed a bag and ran? She looked up, finally. Her eyes were bloodshot. No. I waited too long. I felt my chest tighten. One night he found a message I'd sent to a clinic, just asking about prenatal appointments. He went quiet. That's how I knew something was really wrong. Trey wasn't the kind of man who got quiet. He was rage bottled up and disguised with charm. But that night, he just smiled and said, let's go for a drive. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I'd heard it in her before. Cold. Detached. Dangerous. I faked a stomach cramp at the gas station, she whispered. Told him I needed the bathroom. I never came back. I sat down across from her, rubbing my temples. So let me get this straight. You cheated on me with a guy who turned out to be a manipulative freak. You stayed with him while I vanished. Then you find out the baby isn't his. He gets creepy. You vanish, again, and now you're sitting in my kitchen telling me you're scared. She didn't respond. I stood up. You think I owe you help? You think I can just flip a switch and forget what you did to me? Lorna slowly reached into her coat pocket and slid something across the table. A phone. Her old one. Before I left, I recorded him, she said. I figured if anything happened to me, someone needed to know. You should listen to it. I stared at the phone like it might explode. I didn't want her evidence. I didn't want any of this. But I picked it up anyway. The recording was dated 3 nights ago. I pressed play. The voice that came through was calm. Male. Charismatic. Controlled. You know, Lorna, if that baby's not mine, I'll still be a father. Just not the kind you want me to be. You understand. Then silence. Then her voice. Trey, don't please. Just listen. No, you listen, he cut in. You think you can make a fool of me? Run off with some past mistake and pretend like it never happened? I gave you everything. You were mine. And now you're going to learn what it means to be forgotten. I stopped the tape. My hands were cold. I looked at her, unsure whether I was more afraid for her or for myself. She saw it on my face. He'll find me, she said. It's only a matter of time. I should have told her to leave. I should have sent her to the cops, to a shelter, to anyone but me. Instead, I said, you stay here. For now. And as soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I just stepped into something I couldn't walk back from. I told myself it was temporary. A night, maybe two. Just until she found a place. Just until she got her bearings. Just until I convinced myself that none of this was actually happening. But that first night turned into 3. Then 5. Lorna never asked to stay longer. She barely spoke. She kept to the edges of the apartment like a ghost who knew she wasn't welcome but had nowhere else to haunt. She folded her blanket neatly every morning, ate next to nothing, and flinched every time a car pulled up outside. I should have hated her more than I did. I wanted to. I told myself every night while lying stiff on my mattress, her old side of the bed still untouched, that this woman was poison, that she had already bled me dry once and was back for more. But the truth is, watching her crumble like that, it broke something in me. Not love, not sympathy, either. Just this strange, twisted mixture of guilt and obligation that I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. Maybe that's what she was counting on. On the 6th morning, I noticed it. The mailbox. I opened it to find an envelope with no return address, my name scrawled in uneven handwriting. Inside was a single Polaroid. Lorna, standing outside a hardware store 2 blocks from my apartment, holding her stomach, looking over her shoulder. The message on the back read, "Found her. I didn't show her. Not yet." I spent the entire afternoon pacing the living room, blinds drawn, curtains shut, every sound outside setting my nerves on fire. I checked the locks 3 times. I pulled an old baseball bat out of the closet and set it behind the door like I was in some horror movie cliché. It didn't make me feel better. Nothing did. She noticed something was off by dinner. I wasn't exactly subtle. "What happened?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I laughed, bitter and dry. That'd actually be less stressful than this. She leaned forward. "Did he reach out?" I didn't respond. Just handed her the Polaroid. Her face changed. Not shock, resignation. Like she'd been waiting for it. "He's here," she said quietly. "I knew it. Why didn't you tell me he'd follow you?" "I hoped he wouldn't." "That's not hope. That's delusion." She flinched, but didn't argue. She just stood up and went to the window, lifting the curtain an inch with 2 fingers. Her breath fogged the glass. "He's not going to stop, Gareth. You don't know what he's capable of." "Then tell me," I snapped. "Stop feeding me pieces and give me the whole damn picture." Her voice was quieter now. "The week after I told him about the pregnancy, he made me quit my job. Said it was for my health. But then he started isolating me. No phone calls. No visits. He even had a camera installed in the living room. I wasn't allowed to leave unless I took a photo of where I was going and sent it to him." I stared. "You're serious?" She nodded. If I didn't reply to a message within 5 minutes, he'd show up. Once I didn't answer fast enough, and he drove straight to the supermarket and screamed at me in front of strangers. Said I was humiliating him. My jaw clenched. I hated how it made me feel protective. Like my instincts were betraying logic. I shouldn't care. But the way she spoke, it wasn't theatrical. It was hollow. Like someone recounting a nightmare that still had its claws in her mind. "And now he's here," I murmured. "Watching. He doesn't forgive," she said. "And he never forgets." That night, I barely blinked. Every creak in the hallway, every muffled voice from the street below, sent jolts through my spine. I slept with my phone on my chest and the bat against the bed frame. Around 2:40 a.m., the apartment buzzer rang. I jumped. Lorna bolted upright on the couch, eyes wide. Neither of us moved. The buzzer rang again. And again. I moved slowly to the intercom. No one spoke. Just silence. I didn't press the button. I just stood there, heart pounding, sweat soaking through my t-shirt. The buzzing stopped. A minute passed. Then 2. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same rhythm. Same pause between the 3rd and 4th. I didn't open the door. Instead, I walked back, looked Lorna in the eyes, and finally said the words I never thought I would again. "You're not safe here. But neither am I." The knock echoed in my skull for hours after it stopped. I didn't open the door that night. I couldn't. I just stood there with every muscle in my body locked tight, like a man expecting a gun to go off. But it never did. Eventually, the hallway returned to silence. No footsteps retreating, no elevator ding. Just silence, so thick it started to feel like pressure on my chest. By morning, I was in full paranoia mode. I hadn't slept. Lorna hadn't either, though she pretended. Her face was pale, lips dry, her hands twitchy like she was fighting to keep herself from unraveling in front of me. I didn't know what to do, so I did what I always do when life falls apart. I made coffee. Strong, black, bitter. It didn't help, but it gave my hands something to do. We sat at the table again. Same seats, same distance, but everything felt changed. I asked, "Has he ever hurt you?" She didn't answer right away, just stared into her cup like it could protect her from the truth. Finally, she nodded. "I have photos," she said, "and medical records. I went once, when he fractured my rib." The words felt heavy, disgusting, real. "You should go to the police," I said. "I can't," she whispered. "He's connected." That phrase set something cold off inside me. I hated how vague it was, but I also knew exactly what it meant. The kind of guy who smiles through threats, who knows people who owe him favors. The kind of guy who doesn't need to shout to be dangerous. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Lorna. I'm not a bodyguard. I'm not even." I paused. "I'm not your anything anymore." She looked up. "You're the father of this baby." I exhaled through my nose. That baby. I hadn't allowed myself to think about it. Not as a real person. Not yet. But every time I looked at her stomach, every time I saw her shift uncomfortably to ease the weight of it, some awful part of me wondered if it really was mine. And if it was, what kind of world had she brought that child into? Later that day, I left her at the apartment and walked the block. I needed space. Air. My head was buzzing like a broken neon sign. I hadn't told anyone she was back. No one even knew where I lived now. Not since I moved here to erase her shadow. I felt like I was walking through a city that wasn't mine anymore. And that's when I saw it. A black SUV, parked across the street from my building. Same model Lorna described when we first met at the cafe. Tinted windows. Engine off. No movement. But it was there. Just sitting. Watching. I slowed my steps and pretended to check my phone. I didn't look directly at the vehicle, but I felt it. Like eyes pressed against my spine. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I ducked into a bookstore 3 doors down. The owner gave me a weird look. I was shaking, barely speaking, pacing the aisles like a lunatic. I stayed there for 30 minutes, pretending to browse. When I finally stepped back outside, the SUV was gone. I rushed back upstairs. Lorna was pacing too. She jumped when she saw me. "There was a car," I said. "Same one you told me about." Her face turned to glass. "We have to leave," she said. "Now." I stared at her. "Leave? Go where?" "I don't know. Just away. He'll come inside eventually. If he's watching, he's already planning." It was insane. Running again? I had just barely started rebuilding what little life I had left. But looking at her, hearing the desperation, the tremble under every word, I realized something. He was coming. And this time, if he caught her, she wouldn't be the only casualty. "I have a friend 2 towns over," I said slowly. "He owns a cabin. It's off the grid. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors." She nodded. "Perfect." We packed that night. Quietly, deliberately. I didn't bring much, just essentials. Lorna packed like she'd done this before. I didn't ask how many times she had. I didn't want to know. At 2 a.m., we slipped down the back stairwell and left through the alley. My old car sat quietly in the lot, still dusty from disuse. I turned the key and prayed it wouldn't stall. It didn't. As we pulled away, I checked the mirrors. Nothing behind us. No headlights. No SUV. Still, I didn't exhale until the city lights were miles behind us. Neither of us spoke for over an hour. And when we finally did, she turned to me and asked the question I hadn't let myself think about until that moment. "Do you still believe I'm lying about the baby?" I looked at her for a long second, then back to the road. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we're about to find out what else you've been hiding." The cabin sat like a scar in the woods, half forgotten, crooked at the foundation, and smelling of old pine and dust. But it was far from the city, and more importantly, it was nowhere Trey would think to look. I hadn't been there in years, not since I helped Logan, my only real friend, patch up the broken window after some storm ripped through. He owed me for that, even if he didn't know I'd be cashing in that favor by hiding my pregnant ex-wife from a maniac. We arrived just before sunrise. The sky was bruised purple, and mist curled low along the ground like fingers trying to hold us back. I parked behind the shed, out of sight from the dirt road, just in case. Inside, everything smelled like time and neglect. The wallpaper was peeling, and the wooden floors groaned with every step. But it was safe, or at least safer than the buzzing city where I had seen the SUV. Lorna walked in slowly, her hands resting protectively over her stomach like she expected something to leap out from the shadows. I watched her take it all in, the rusted fireplace, the scratched furniture, the single bedroom with the twin bed that looked like it had belonged to a child 30 years ago. "This'll work," she said quietly. That was all. We didn't speak much for the next few hours. I needed rest, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept staring at the ceiling, listening for movement outside, half expecting to hear tires crunching over gravel or boots stomping up the stairs. Every sound of wind brushing against branches sounded like a threat. But it wasn't just the fear of Trey. It was her. I didn't trust her. Not fully. Not yet. She'd lied before. Lied easily. She had let me fall apart after finding out she cheated and vanished like I was some stain she needed to scrub from her history. Now she was in my space again, carrying a child she swore was mine, spinning stories about a controlling man and veiled threats. Maybe it was all true. Maybe some of it wasn't. But if she was playing a game, I needed to know what the rules were before I got trapped again. By evening, I finally broke the silence. "Why?" She looked up from the blanket she was folding on the couch. "What? Trey? Out of everyone? Why cheat on me with him?" She hesitated. "I don't know," she said. "That's not good enough." She sat down slowly, her face drawn tight. "You stopped looking at me like I was still someone worth wanting." My stomach turned. "I looked at you like you were everything," I said, voice low. "You just weren't paying attention." "I needed to feel seen," she whispered. "Trey saw me." I nodded slowly, pressing my palms together like I was holding back the scream in my throat. "He saw you? Or he made you forget you had a life worth not destroying?" She didn't respond. Her silence was enough. Then she added something I didn't expect. "He wasn't like this in the beginning." "They never are," I muttered. The night was quiet after that. I let her take the bed. I slept on the floor with a pillow from the couch, the baseball bat next to me like it was the only promise of safety I had left. I kept waking up every hour, checking the window, the door, the lock. I didn't want to admit it, but the fear wasn't just of Trey finding us, it was of not knowing what would happen if he didn't. What then? The next morning, I walked the edge of the tree line with a thermos in hand, needing to get out of the cabin before it swallowed me. That's when I saw the prints. Tire tracks. Deep. Fresh. Still moist from the dew. Coming up the trail and veering off toward the thicket just a few yards from the cabin's entrance. Then they disappeared into the brush. I froze. There hadn't been any cars when we arrived. And no one lived nearby. That trail wasn't even marked on most maps anymore. Someone had been here. I ran back inside, breath sharp, chest burning. Lorna was in the kitchen, boiling water on the stove. She turned when she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked, voice rising. I grabbed the car keys. "We're not staying," I said. "He found us." She dropped the kettle. It shattered, hot water spilling across the counter and floor. She didn't even flinch. "We don't have time to pack," I said. "Get in the car. Now." But when I opened the front door, there it was. A single white envelope nailed to the outside of the doorframe. The nail was driven clean through the wood, like someone had taken their time making sure it didn't fall off. I ripped it down. Inside was a piece of paper. No handwriting. Just a printed message. "You're not the only one who knows how to disappear." My throat tightened. Lorna stepped behind me, saw the note, and clutched my arm with trembling fingers. "What does that mean?" she whispered. I stared out into the woods, every tree now feeling like it had eyes. "It means," I said, "this was never about taking you back." I turned to her slowly. "It means he doesn't want you found." We left the cabin that same morning without a plan, without a destination, and with less than a quarter tank of gas. It was a reckless, panicked escape, but what else could it be? The moment I held that note in my hand, I knew we were no longer hiding. We were being hunted. The silence in the car was unbearable. Lorna stared out the passenger side window, one hand resting on her stomach, the other gripping the handle like it might keep her from flying out of the vehicle. I couldn't stop checking the mirror, expecting that black SUV to come roaring over the horizon. Nothing did. For the first time in days, I wished something would. "You think he's tracking us?" I asked finally, not taking my eyes off the road. She nodded slowly. "Probably." "You bring your phone?" "No," she said, then hesitated. "Only the burner one. No SIM." I let out a breath. Still risky. We drove for hours, weaving through back roads, avoiding freeways, stopping only once to fill up at a grimy gas station where the clerk didn't even look up from his lottery tickets. I paid in cash. Lorna didn't leave the car. Eventually, I pulled over on a side road leading to a remote park I remembered from childhood, Griffin Hollow. It was barely a place. A patch of forest, a dried-up stream, a cracked restroom with a rusted-out sink. But it was empty. And quiet. And for the moment, safe. We parked beneath a cluster of dead trees, and I killed the engine. Neither of us moved for a long time. "Gareth," she said eventually, her voice raw. "If something happens, if he finds us and I don't make it." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't even start that. I need you to promise me something." I shook my head. "I'm not making deathbed promises in a parked car, Lorna." She turned to me, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked. "Promise me you'll protect the baby. Even if you don't forgive me. Even if you walk away after it's born. Just make sure it doesn't end up anywhere near him." My chest tightened. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. She was speaking like this thing was inevitable, like Trey had already won and we were just waiting for the executioner's footsteps. But I wasn't ready to accept that. So I got out of the car and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I walked toward the tree line, every branch above me hissing in the wind like it knew something I didn't. I didn't go far. Just needed to breathe. Think. Feel anything other than this raw, scraping dread that had hollowed me out. When I turned back, she was gone. The car door hung open. "Lorna." My voice cracked the quiet like a whip. No answer. I ran. Checked the restroom first, nothing. Circled around to the back of the trees near the dry creek, still nothing. I yelled her name again, panic flaring now, real and sharp. And then I saw the boot print. Half in mud, half on leaves. Deep. Large. Heading toward the western edge of the woods where the tree line curved. A second one followed. Smaller. Hers. I sprinted. Branches whipped at my face, thorns cut through my sleeves, and I stumbled over rocks and roots as if the forest wanted to protect its secrets. My breath burned in my lungs, and my legs felt like concrete, but I didn't stop until I heard it. A muffled shout. And then silence. I found her maybe 40 yards in. Flat on the ground, dazed, her face scraped, her knee bleeding. She was alive, but shaken, trembling all over. "He grabbed me," she whispered. "He was behind the car. I didn't see him. I tried to run. He said he just wanted to talk, but he tried to pull me into the trees." I helped her up, my hands shaking worse than hers. We got back to the car and locked the doors. I wanted to drive, but my hands wouldn't grip the wheel. My body was there, but my mind was somewhere else, somewhere darker. "He was watching us the whole time," I murmured. "Yes," she said. "He always does." I looked at her, the woman who'd torn my life in half, and now sat beside me as broken as I'd once been. "Then we have to stop running." She blinked at me. "What?" I said. "We stop. We end this." "And how do you suppose we do that?" I stared through the windshield into the endless stretch of trees. "We don't run anymore. We pull him in." She stared at me like I was insane. But I was done hiding, done wondering. If he wanted to find us, then let him. But this time, I'd be waiting. We didn't go far. Just down the road, maybe 2 miles, where the park ranger station used to be, now gutted and forgotten like everything else around Griffin Hollow. But the radio still worked. And more importantly, it still patched through to county dispatch. I gave them my real name. Told them I had information about an ongoing domestic threat. And yes, we were in danger. I told them he had followed us. Had already attempted to grab her. That there was a restraining order on file from out of state. I gave them everything. I stopped being scared. It took them 20 minutes to reach us. In that time, Lorna didn't speak. She sat there beside me in the car, gripping my hand so tightly it started to go numb. She didn't cry. Not anymore. She just breathed, deep, steady, like every inhale might be her last free one. But when the first cruiser pulled into the clearing, she exhaled like she hadn't done so in months. The police were surprisingly fast after that. More cars showed up. One officer took my statement while 2 others swept the woods. Lorna gave them the burner phone and the Polaroid. She even offered the recording again this time, with clarity and detail. Her voice didn't tremble once. That's how I knew something had shifted. By the time they arrested Trey, found hiding less than half a mile from where he'd attacked her, they already had enough evidence to charge him on 3 separate counts, including attempted abduction and violation of protective orders in multiple states. Turns out, Lorna had filed for protection before, but had never followed through with enforcement, too afraid of what he'd do. But this time, she didn't back down. I sat in the hospital lobby while she was checked out for her fall. I remember staring at the vending machine, debating between stale trail mix or a pack of crackers I wouldn't eat. It hit me then how strange it was that I could even consider something so mundane when everything else had just cracked wide open. The doctor came out, smiling gently. "She's okay," he said. "The baby's fine. A little bruised, but strong heartbeat. She's asking for you." I walked into that room like I was entering a church. And there she was, hair messy, eyes tired, cheeks flushed, but smiling. For the first time in a long, long time, she looked human again. Real. Not some version of a woman I once knew, but someone rebuilt from pain and truth. She reached for my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. I sat beside her, hesitant. "I don't know what happens next," I said honestly. "I don't even know who we are anymore." She nodded. "That's fair. But if the baby is mine," "He is. Then I'm not leaving. Not again. Not while he needs someone sane in his corner." A tear slipped down her cheek. Not sorrow. Relief. We didn't say the word forgiveness. That felt too big. Too far. But there was something gentler between us now, an understanding that pain doesn't disappear overnight, but some things are still worth repairing. 2 months later, I was in the hospital room again. Only this time, there was no panic. No fear. Just the sound of a newborn crying and Lorna's shaky laughter as she whispered, "He has your eyes." I didn't answer right away. I was too busy staring at that tiny, furious face. So fragile. So alive. And somehow, despite everything, so hopeful. I named him Caleb. Lorna agreed. "No? We take it one day at a time. She's getting therapy. I'm in parenting classes. We still sleep in separate rooms, but some nights we stay up talking until the sun peeks through the window. We're not the same people we were. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're better. Not perfect. Not healed. But trying. And sometimes, that's enough to start over."